Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Getting Our Hands in the Dirt. I just want to go like this when I say that. The healing and wisdom of simple gardening with Erin Perry, founder and executive director of Why on Earth Community, and Brigitte Mars, herbalist, author, and professor. Welcome.
Greetings. Thank you.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Yes, we're so happy to have you. I'm Charissa Sims, live event host for Humanities Team, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization whose mission is to make conscious living pervasive worldwide by 2040. And I'm coming to you live from Lafayette, Colorado. I also wanted to welcome Erin and Brigitte's audience, those streaming live through the Humanities Team Facebook page, the Humanities Team YouTube channel, and Stream Plus members that are here with us now. Thanks for being members and being on camera. I wanted to do a special shout out to the Sign Network with John and Summer Raymer at Sign.network. They are doing a campaign right now for peace called Compassion Games until March 1st, so coming up. And so you can learn more at compassiongames.org/oneworld. Because it's a live program, we will have time for comments and questions. And what an incredible opportunity to ask Erin and Brigitte a question about gardening. So try to get it in within the first half of the program, the first 30 minutes, and post it in the chat wherever you're watching. And yeah, let me just share a little bit more about Brigitte Mars and Erin Perry. Brigitte Mars is an herbalist and nutritional consultant of natural health with almost 50 years of experience. She teaches herbal medicine at Europa University and the School of Health Mastery in Iceland. That's so incredible. And has taught at Omega Institute, Esalen, Kripalu, Sivananda, Yoga Ashram, Arise, Envision, and Unify festivals, the Mayo Clinic. She is a professional member of the American Herbalist Guild and is the author of 17 books and DVDs, including the Natural First Aid Handbook, the Home Reference to Holistic Health and Healing, and the Country Almanac of Home Remedies, the desktop guide to herbal medicine, beauty by nature, and addiction free naturally. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I just realized I remember that I have met you in person. I went to one of your workshops. It was incredible. It was about igniting the feminine and healing the feminine goddess. So it was wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And Erin, I've also had the pleasure of meeting Erin Perry in person at the Humanities Team Awards ceremony here in Boulder. So let me share more about him. He's got an incredible resume. Social and environmental entrepreneur Erin William Perry is the founder and executive director of the Why on Earth community, which focuses on thriving communities and planetary prosperity across the three pillars of cultural, ecological, and economic stewardship and sustainability. As the executive producer and curator of the Gardening Success video series, Erin hosts a variety of regenerative farmers, gardeners, and herbal medicine practitioners to deliver you the expert knowledge and wisdom you need to succeed in your own gardening endeavors. Erin studied environmental policy and sustainable development in graduate school and received his permaculture design certification in 2001. He now collaborates with a worldwide network of ambassadors, regenerative farmers, and stewardship projects and hosts the acclaimed Why on Earth community podcast, on which many of the Gardening Success video series instructors have appeared as guests. He is the author of several books, and so one of them he's going to be sharing about later, Why on Earth, Get Smarter, Feel Better, Heal the Planet, the Soil Stewardship Handbook, the visionary eco-thriller Veritas. I don't know if I said that right. It's
Perfect.
Latin. It's so beautiful. I want to hear more about that. The Great Healing is Within Our Power. and several children's books, including Celebrating Soil. So let's go on to our questions. Brigitte, what are the overall benefits of a gardening practice?
There are so many for body, mind, and spirit. Well, one really great one is you're a lot more likely to get your kids to eat their vegetables if they've taken part in the miracle of planting a seed and watching it grow. It's also sort of like a way to connect with nature. Even people who live in the city, as I do, even picking your own cherry tomatoes or fresh lettuce, the freshness that you get. If we consider that many of the vegetables that we buy at the store, even though it's so wonderful, there's such a plethora of organic vegetables available. But how long ago were those in the soil? So the idea that you could pick lettuce or spinach or a rutabaga that was growing 5 minutes ago and transform it into your meal, that's something you can't buy at the store. Um, it's also a great relaxing thing to do. It gets you outside, it's good exercise, the quality of vegetables. It teaches you to be a better steward of the earth. You want to protect the air and the water and the soil. It really is a way to see the miracle of life before your very eyes. So I never get tired of doing it. And it is a work in progress. Some years are better than others, but there's always more to learn. This is a subject that teaches you so much.
That's wonderful. And Erin, did you have anything to add about the benefits of a gardening practice?
Well, certainly what Brigitte has shared is essential and covers a lot. I would just add in addition, that there's quite a bit of scientific research now available that has connected the dots between the microorganisms in the living soil and the neurobiochemical balance and well-being we experience within our bodies. And the research shows that gardening dramatically reduces the stress hormones in our systems. It improves our immune system function and even our cognitive function. So there's an incredible set of these personal benefits that accrue. And additionally, one of the other pieces of what's happening when we're gardening is often we're composting and often we're working with the cycles, with the organic matter cycles that essentially is helping to pull carbon out of the atmosphere and sequester it into the soil, whether it's through biochar or compost. Several of the items we go into in depth in our gardening video course, these are ways we can help bring more balance to our global climate, our global atmospheric system. And it turns out that all of the carbon we've released, humanity has released into the atmosphere since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution through things like fossil fuel combustion and tillage and chemical-based agriculture, that all adds up to an equivalent of a 10% increase in soil carbon worldwide. So as millions, if not billions of us get directly involved in this soil building and carbon sequestration work that is part of gardening, we're not only experiencing these personal benefits, but we're actually contributing in a very meaningful way to these global systemic challenges we're facing.
Yeah, that's amazing. What really caught my ear was when you said the cognitive benefits. So, have they done research, Brigitte or Erin? Do you know about those benefits? Can it reduce the extreme dementia, or can it be a type of exercise? Like, what are those benefits? Do you
I,
want to
you
speak
know,
to that, Brigitte?
well, for me, I don't need a scientific study to know how good it is because you're outdoors. We know that full spectrum light affects our hormones. We're exercising. We know that the brain really appreciates good nutrition, and a lot of our vegetables that are high in sulfur, things like broccoli, cabbage, arugula, kale, the brain loves sulfur. It loves freshness. And if people want to spend millions of dollars to prove something that we know intuitively and that our
Hmm.
ancestors knew, they can do that, but that's not what really drives me. If you
Mm,
do it, you know it. And not to mention, there's more food, there's less driving. People think they have to get into a car for every meal. So um, it just enhances your intelligence because you start looking at the possibilities of everything and, oh, there's room for that, or I could put a fruit tree there. And you just feel like you are more empowered, and that's good for creating less stress and worry and more intelligence because you're doing the
mm.
right thing.
Yeah, it's like taking charge of your life and your health so you can feel empowered. And what do you think about that, Aaron?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Brigitte's saying, and it reminds me of an early childhood experience I had with my grandfather, who was an avid gardener and a survivor of as a prisoner of war in World War II, and of course, suffered PTSD. And I remember as a young kid asking him, "Grandpa, why do you like to garden so much?" Here I was holding a football, wanting to play catch or something. And he paused and he looked right in my eyes and he said, "Because it makes me feel better."
Mhm.
And this is exactly what Brigitte's speaking to. When we have firsthand experience of this incredible gift of life and connection with the soil here on planet Earth, yeah, we don't need the scientific studies. But I think for many of us who are disconnected, knowing the science is there and is robust probably can help convince more of us to reconnect with the soil. And it's without question that our ancestors, by definition, lived in much closer relationship with soil and plants. This is the natural context in which we've evolved. And there's so much opportunity and need for us to get back to that direct connection. At least that's my opinion, and I know Brigitte agrees because we've talked about it before.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that story and connection with your grandfather. I've had that experience too with my grandfather who grew roses. And then my other grandfather had orange trees, and we used to have fresh squeezed orange juice. This was in California. And I just have so many good memories of that, him teaching me how to pick the oranges and all of that. So, what does it mean to you, Aaron, to be a soil steward? I know you have a book on that.
Yeah, in some ways we can think of this in a sophisticated manner, but in other ways it's very simple. And it turns out that our relationship as human beings with the soil is so important. It's actually embedded in our language. Right. So the Latin derived term human from Proto-Indo-European language families is connected to the term humus, meaning soil, and as well as the term humility and humor. Right. And so as we're connecting with soil and we're practicing more humility, practicing more humor, it turns out probably our lives are improved substantially. And even in the Hebrew, in the creation story found in the book of Genesis, the creation of Adam or Adam from the soil, the clay, the Adamah, again reinforces this direct connection between humanity and soil. This shows up in the Vedas, it shows up in many ancient texts around the world. And so very simply, there's an opportunity for us to not only engage with soil, this can be with our houseplants, this can be with our gardens, but also to become more conscious of the organic nutrient cycling we're all participating in when we're cutting carrots, preparing a stew, or whatever it might be. Those kitchen scraps we can put into the compost as opposed to the trash. And when they go into the compost, they contribute to the fertility cycling, the carbon sequestration of which I spoke. When instead, if it ends up in landfill, it's actually exacerbating the methane loading, the greenhouse gas loading of the atmosphere and the climate. So a lot of this is what we're doing in our own homes, in our own yards, in our own communities, and even in our homes with our house plants and connecting with the soil like that. There's something very special and magical that happens when we become more conscious and in front of mind about that direct connection.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Brigitte, I wanted to ask how you initially got into gardening.
There was this Crosby, Stills and Nash song, "We got to get back to the land." Remember that? So in the 70s, a group of us bought 200 acres in the Ozarks, and the closest store was about an hour away, and they just sold, white bread and cigarettes and Kraft cheese slices. We said, we better learn to grow our own food. And so we started doing it because we lived, four-wheel drive road. But probably a huge revelation to me was there was this old hillbilly woman who was sort of a friend to the hippies. She wasn't afraid of us. And I was going over, we would help her do little chores, and maybe she'd gift us a dozen eggs or something. And I was going to pull up some weeds in her garden to help her. And I
Uh-huh.
had my hand on this plant, and she said, "Yous can eat this. That there's lamb's quarter. It's wild spinach, and it's good for you." And that sentence changed my life because I realized that a lot of the things we think are weeds are the ancestors of our cultivated vegetables, and they're edible too. And the fact that you would have even more food than you were growing if you learned to eat the weeds. So I've written a couple books, one just on nettles, and then one just on
Oh.
dandelion, because, you know,
Mm.
I think it's great to be prolific, abundant, and have supernourishment. And at the time, we didn't even have electricity. So I used this big black trampoline as a food dehydrator to store food for the winter. So it's about being able to be independent and feed your family when what they have at the store is not as good as what you can do.
Mm. Oh, I'm so glad I asked. That's an amazing story. And nettle and dandelion roots, can you eat those raw or do you need to break them down into a tea,
Um,
Brigitte?
Well, you can certainly make them into a tea. You can eat dandelion greens raw. You can boil the stems like noodles and then add garlic and olive oil. Nettles have a sting to them. So most people will cook nettles to deactivate the sting, which, by the way, is very helpful for arthritic pain and increasing circulation. So the sting is medicinal. You probably have heard of aviotherapy, where people are getting stung by bees for things like
I
arthritis.
haven't heard of the therapy for it. I mean, I don't know the remedy. No.
Okay, well, nettles can do the same thing without harming the bees, but nettles
Okay.
that sting if you blend it, cook it, dry it, or puree it. So there's hundreds of ways you can use both of the plants. Um,
Yeah, there's benefits to women too. I remember someone recommending nettle tea for immune response and milk production when I was,
Absolutely. It's a
yeah.
galactagogue and it strengthens your bones and your teeth. Rudolf Steiner, the founder of, biodynamic gardening, he said
Uh-huh.
nettles are the heart of the world. I mean, because any plant that's high in essential oils that grows near nettles, their essential oil content's going to be even more abundant.
Okay. Can you eat the top of the dandelion flower? Is
The
that edible?
flowers, the
Yeah.
flowers are high in lutein.
Am I being naive?
No, no, no. You can go
Okay.
buy a bottle of lutein for $20 at the health food store, or you
Okay.
could start eating the dandelion blossoms. And the idea that dandelions are a pest, we need to remember that they aerate the soil. Every part is useful. They feed multiple pollinators, and they are one of the first foods for the bees, but they also help to clear old stored emotions out of the liver. There is research on dandelion root being an anti-cancer remedy. It certainly clears up acne. I mean, that's why both of those herbs deserved a whole book. Um, so yes, the flowers are edible. I make dandelion flower muffins and dandelion souffle and dandelion cookies and dandelion
Oh
cake.
my God,
My
I'm
God,
coming over for breakfast.
why, I really think it is bad business. People think they need to poison their lawn, and spraying pesticides not only kills the dandelions, it kills the soil microorganisms so the earthworms don't flourish. It's so wrong. So we need to rethink the weeds. I really think they're some of the healthiest things we could possibly eat because they adapt to adversity. They grow before you can even be planting your lettuce. They survive the snow, the being walked upon, the pollution. Like we in this time on our planet, we need to be adaptable. We need to be like the dandelion to find the way to flourish despite adversity. So they give us a strength
Mm.
that you can't find um, hardly anywhere else.
Yeah, and I find it so inspiring when you see a dandelion that pokes out of the cement or a blade of grass. Like, wow, that's powerful. Well, at this point, I'd love to play a clip from Simple Gardening that's on Stream Plus, Simple Gardening Wisdom. Can we play that first clip?
As we build soil in collaboration with plants and shrubs and trees, we're helping to accelerate and support a process of carbon sequestration, a natural process that those living organisms can employ to put carbon into the soil as they breathe it out of the atmosphere. It's a virtuous cycle, and when we get into the composting practices, this helps to accelerate and amplify this cycle, and we're literally pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it into the ground where a lot of it belongs, we like to say. Additionally, we know there's a lot of research out there indicating that our direct physical contact with living soil, which has millions of microorganisms in each handful, is substantially beneficial to our own bodies, our own health and well-being, even our minds and our emotional states. There's research indicating that interacting with these microbes as we get our hands in the dirt will enhance our cognitive performance, our immune system performance, and even our mood. We know that this interaction with the soil will help produce increased serotonin levels. These are the feel-good neurobiochemicals that help us feel happier. And as we get into the more alchemical or symbolic practices of soil building and working with the living plants, we're engaging in a process that allows us to connect directly with the elements. That's the earth, of course, the water, of course, the air, the atmosphere, and finally fire. We find fire is at work in all of us living organisms at a very small scale as we're all metabolizing our foods to be alive. And in that process, we get to also engage in the never-ending cycle we experience here on Earth of life emerging from death that gives way to new life emerging again. And this is part of the composting and soil building cycle we participate in when we're gardening.
That was a beautiful clip, very well made. And I just wanted to go deeper into that. Erin, what is the cycle we experience on Earth, and how do we apply this to gardening?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. I just wanted to point out too that in the full gardening course that's available, we do deep dives into many of these different topics, including, with Brigitte, we actually filmed walking around downtown Boulder around her home, looking at a number of different edible weeds, and then preparing some food and drink from them at the end, and including weeds coming up right out of the cracks in concrete as we were talking about. And with Nick Domenico, we did a nice dive into the composting, bed preparation, starting seeds, mulching, the various kind of nuts and bolts practices that help us with our gardening success. And then with Helen Atto, we've got a module on natural weed management in the garden. And with Joy and Eric McEwen, there's a natural beekeeping module. With Kelpie Wilson, there's a backyard biochar module going very deep into the science, practice, and ancient tradition of biochar making found around the world. And with Shelby Kaminsky, we've got an advanced compost tea making module. So there's lots of very practical nuts and bolts knowledge and technique that's explored in these various modules. And then, of course, with Stuart Lundy, we have an introduction into biodynamics, which starts to head into a little more of the esoteric, if you will, the symbolic that was originally articulated by Rudolf Steiner about 100 years ago, as Brigitte mentioned. And I'm delighted to see in the tapestry behind Brigitte there, right by her shoulder, is a alchemical symbol for soil, actually, that red downward pointing triangle with the horizontal line through it. Above, next to Brigitte, yeah, there's the alchemical symbol for soil. And then the big Merkaba by Brigitte's head there, that beautiful golden Merkaba, incorporates all of the alchemical symbols for the four primary elements that are referenced in the Western tradition. So each of these modules presents a lot of wonderful information, and many of the module instructors, like Kelpie, here's her book on biochar. Many of them are also authors like Brigitte. Helen's book, The Ecological Farm, and we have a biodynamics for beginners book by a practitioner named Hugh Courtney, whom Stuart Lundy knew very well, and Stuart wrote the introduction for that book. So just want to make sure everybody understands that there's a whole lot more on offer than what we can cover here in this chat today. That all said, there's, to your question, there's in many spiritual traditions around the world, there's this incredible emphasis on life after death, whether that's through the lens of resurrection, through the lens of reincarnation. There's this notion of non-finality at the moment of expiration, right? And the spiration part's interesting because in the Latin, that's getting into breath. But basically, what's happening on this planet, life has been here for a very, very long time. And terrestrial life has been here almost entirely because of the soil. And every annual cycle where we experience the leaves dropping in the temperate zones, falling to the earth and going into this incredible, we could even say alchemical natural process where that material is converted by the amazing action of the soil microbes through the course of the winter back into fertility available for the next great awakening and flush, right? And we get so many beautiful mythological stories about this wonderful awakening that occurs in the spring after the apparent dormancy of winter. So, when we're connecting with soil, when we're in touch with the natural elements and cycles, these things are no longer mere metaphor or story. They are the immediate reality in which we're all participating.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. And we were talking about before we came live about gardening by the moon cycles. And I was also curious, Brigitte, about when women menstruate, putting that into the soil. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Absolutely. Well, the word menstrual means moon. Um,
Mm, hmm.
and we are women 28-day cycle on the average and 28-day lunar cycle. So my grandmother was French Canadian, and I grew up her paying a lot of attention to the moon cycles. Even when do we cut our hair? When do we trim our nails? When do we plant above ground plants? When do we plant below ground plants? So it always seemed a little, magical to me. And really a way to be attuned. And very often, many of us don't even know anything about, where's the moon and what phase it's in.
Right.
But I always, write in my book, like it's a full moon, we should at least go for a walk. But I want to say something about the menstrual blood because
Okay.
I'm also a health practitioner and have a private practice. And so many women, I was telling my students at Naropa this yesterday, they really suffer from menstrual cramps. And the media is telling women, oh, when you are on your moon time, as I like to call it, you need to plug yourself up, wear tight white jeans, and go horseback riding. And that is, you know what I mean? Like the ads used to say, just, put something in and forget about it. You don't want to think about it.
Okay.
And your body is trying to push the blood out so you have even more cramping. So what I suggest, and I did when I was still a more youthful bleeding woman, you don't have to do that. You can cut up an old flannel sheet or some soft cotton t-shirts, stick them in your underwear, and then soak them in a bucket of water and
Mm,
then give that blood water back to the plants. It also helps to heal your relationship with your menses. And people think nothing of going to the hardware store and buying things like sheep's blood or cow manure. Like the blood is the nourishment to bring forth new life. It's what would be support if a fetus had decided to implant in your uterus. So
hmm.
it's really a precious fluid. And to give it back to the earth, I not only do you save money, but you're making a conscious effort to reconnect and give back to the earth something more precious than you can get at the store. And I mean, there were times where maybe I would have to like put some leaves over the snow or something so it didn't look like a murder was committed outside our door. But it's just, and also I tend not to encourage women like put maybe not put it on the lettuce, but give it to a tree so people don't, get freaked out like don't eat salad at her house because there might be moon blood on it, but really it's very precious and your plants will grow amazingly well and it's a precious fluid.
Mm. Is it the iron in your blood too
It,
that
it's it's
helps?
more than iron. There's many things in there.
Hmm.
Iron, DNA, there's
Mm,
yeah, there's life force in there. I mean, iron is certainly one factor, but there's many others.
hmm. Now, is there a way that the plants know what nutrients we need when we garden with them? Can you speak to that wisdom, Aaron?
Yeah, it's a perfect question following on what Brigitte just mentioned about DNA. One of my favorite planting traditions is practiced by the Hopi and also by the Quechua people, which is before planting the seeds for the corn or the beans in the sacred Three Sisters arrangement with the corn, the beans, and the squash, which provides some companion planting benefits to that, what's called a guild in permaculture terminology. We put the seeds in our mouth to imprint the DNA in our saliva
Mm,
before the planting. And it's believed or understood that this intimate relationship and DNA sharing actually helps the plants have knowledge of what the people need. And so, and I imagine what Brigitte's speaking to is totally in line with that as well. And there's this very interesting symbiosis between the plants and the people that folks like Michael Pollan wrote about in his fabulous book. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of it. It's one of his very early
Botany
books.
of Desire.
Yes, thanks, Brigitte. Botany of Desire. Yeah, so this symbiotic relationship, and many of the indigenous traditions, of course, refer to the plants and the trees as our relatives. And one of my favorite factoids that is to me just mind blowing is that the chlorophyll molecule in the photosynthesizing plants is essentially the exact same molecule as the hemoglobin in our blood, with one difference. In the middle of the chlorophyll molecule, there's a magnesium atom, which in the hemoglobin in the human blood is an iron atom instead. And so it's like, wow, holy smokes, what's really going on here?
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. And I've actually tried that before. I've put the seeds, and I did it with my kids, put the seeds in our mouth and planted it. So that's so fascinating to learn that it was a Hopi tradition. Wonderful. Um, well, I love all this content, and you were talking in Simple Gardening, the program that we have on Stream Plus, about biochar. What is that?
Yeah. Brigitte, if you don't mind, I might jump in on this one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Biochar is essentially a form of charcoal that is made by people all around the world going far back in time, and is also made naturally by nature. Um, it's charcoal that is not completely combusted, and that is often, quote unquote, burned in an oxygen limited situation or a smolder situation, which means that instead of releasing all of the carbon into the atmosphere, which is what occurs when we burn wood down to ash, all the way down to ash, much of the carbon remains intact and in structure, with an incredible set of micro surface structures that allow the carbon to remain stable for a very long time. The half-life is 1,000 years or more. It acts as a sponge for water, maintaining water balance and with the water cycling with the soil. And it also acts as, you could think of it as a super city for the microorganisms. It gives them so much surface area to inhabit. And so biochar we've been learning a lot more about biochar in the last couple of decades, both in that cultures like in the pre-Columbian Amazonian basin were using biochar to feed incredible numbers of people in tropical forest environments, which is otherwise very challenging. And also we know that biochar in the forested and the prairie ecosystems of North America was a big part of the soil building cycle, and was actually happening in many instances without human intervention, just from lightning strikes moving through the landscape, that kind of thing. The partially burned wood would fall into the soil and further build the incredible complex set of relationships that we find in the soil.
Mm.
And I
We
should
have,
just add that Kelpie's book, The Biochar Handbook, is such a wonderful resource, and her module that we put together is fabulous. She goes into a lot of the detail, including the hexagonal structure of the biochar at the molecular level, or at least the microscopic level. And yeah, it's just a joy to experience what she put together for us.
yeah, that's amazing. Did you have anything to add, Brigitte, about
No, but
biochar?
well, just that I tr added it to my raised bed gardens last year, and I really said, oh, yeah, that's really doing something. So I'm kind of new to it, but I'm
Oh,
gonna do it again this year.
exciting. Well, I'd love to play a clip. We have a little clip from your course on Stream Plus on biochar and biodynamics. Can we play that clip?
we've talked now about the importance of the composting and the mulching, chopping and dropping for the soil building and for giving the plants the best optimal environment for them to grow and thrive. And now we're going to talk about a couple of ways we can do even more for the soil building in the garden. And what we've got here is some biochar, a special kind of charcoal, and we'll provide some resources about where you can find this. Tell us, what's biochar, Nick, and why are you mixing some of this into your soil at times?
Yeah, definitely. So biochar is a charcoal-like substance made from wood, and it's burned in a low oxygen environment. And what it creates is this woody material that's incredibly porous. So it's almost like an apartment complex for microbes. It stores the microbes in the biochar, and it also improves the moisture retention of the soil. So your soil can just hold more water, which, as we know, just creates more of that biological processes that we're looking for.
So that probably also helps in the more arid climates with your extension of water availability for the plants, right? Where it might otherwise drain off or evaporate off more quickly. Here it's kind of like a sponge, keeping it in the soil for a longer time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We can just water less when we apply biochar, and it just holds that biological nature to the soil a lot better.
In addition, one of the things I love about biochar is that in addition to the carbon sequestering that the plants are doing, the biochar is drawing down from the trees that were used to make the biochar, and locking a lot of that carbon into the soil for a very long time as well. So we're getting all of these layered benefits just by using this biochar.
It's great stuff. Should we apply some?
Yeah, how do you put it in? Should I pour some down the line here?
Yeah, go ahead and then we can rake it in.
Just a light cover. And are you raking it deep, or what's your approach?
No, we want to get it just below the surface of the soil in the top inch of the soil layer.
Nice and easy, huh?
Oh yeah.
It's like a Zen garden.
Wonderful. It's getting me inspired because it's gotten a little warmer here in Colorado. It feels like spring. That's amazing. Well, we do have a comment from our chat. Thor says, kids eat soil. They are wiser than us adults. Brigitte, did you want to comment on that?
It's true. It's good for your immunity, and having lived in nature, I think I work part-time at a pharmacy, and one of the most expensive probiotics we sell is a probiotic like you usually get from yogurt or acidophilus, made from soil microorganisms, and people are having great results with it.
Oh, fascinating. They actually sell that.
Yeah, I know, $70 for soil microorganisms. And actually, when I'm growing things in my own yard, I sometimes don't wash them so much. I want to imbibe a little bit of soil microorganisms. I think it's a great way to build immunity. So there you go. We really need to change our way of thinking, and that's why it's so great that there's a course like this, that there's, what all the work that Why on Earth is doing. I totally think that the book Veriditas has solutions for some of the planetary problems.
Oh, yes.
So, again, I love reading, but there's not a lot of time to waste. We need to take action. And so if we can be inspired on ways that we can take action, but I would like to say one thing, because, spring is coming, the grocery and hardware stores are starting to be full of seeds. I want to encourage people to buy heirloom seeds, because a lot of our seeds have been modified in a way so that they don't, they'll produce a plant, but no longer can you save your best pumpkin for the seeds or your best tomato for the seeds. They don't want you to be empowered. They want you to have to buy their product again. And so by buying heirloom seeds, you are really helping to promote plants. And to be honest, the way that herbal medicine works, when we start messing with the fertility of our seeds, it's going to mess with the fertility of humanity.
Oh, interesting. So
Mhm.
can I just clarify that? Is heirloom also organic, or is there organic heirloom, or what would be the preference?
I think that it could be both. It could be
Okay.
organic and heirloom.
Okay.
So, Aaron might want to add something to that, but yeah, it's just, we want to support the companies that are thinking ahead about empowering people, empowering the soil, and encouraging the fertility of plants because all the vegetables that we eat come from the wild, and we don't want to manipulate them in a way so it only benefits seed companies, which are often huge commercial industries that often make chemicals as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah, did you want to
Yeah,
comment on that,
I'm
Erin?
I'm
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad, Brigitte, you brought up the seeds, and it's such an important issue on many levels. And one of the levels that Brigitte is sort of pointing to is this hyper financialization of nature that we've been seeing over the course of our lifetimes, and that is resulting in devastating consequences. And in addition to selecting the heirloom and organic seeds from the companies that are embodying appropriate behaviors and exemplifying stewardship and regenerative behaviors, often there are regional seed exchanges that occur in the springtime. In Colorado, I know of a couple that occur around April, where smallholder farmers and gardeners get together and simply swap seeds with one another and get some nice socializing and fellowship at the same time. And our friends, for example, at Joyful Journey Hot Springs have hosted these seed exchanges for a number of years for the San Luis Valley and northern New Mexico regions. And so I think for a lot of us, there's an opportunity to do a little investigating and perhaps like the mycelia in the soils that are the connective filaments of the fungal kingdom, we can establish more and more of these connections among the various creatures and organisms and families and farms in the region and share resources that way, improving the vitality, to the resilience, etc., and of course the viability, as Brigitte was so importantly speaking about with respect to the seeds themselves.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. And I do want to go back to your book so you can talk about that a little bit, but I really appreciate that wisdom on the seeds. And it's so important for everyone to really take this to heart when they start gardening. So tell us about your eco thriller, Veritas.
Super. Yeah. So Viriditas is this book here. It's a visionary eco thriller. It's also an eco feminist story. And this term Viriditas was coined by the incredible genius and spiritual leader Hildegard von Bingen about 900 years ago. And it means the green healing energy of the divine that flows through all the plants. And it's a story that kicks off in New York City with our protagonist, whose name happens to be Brigitte. Brigitte Sophia.
Coincidence?
There are no coincidences, right? Isn't that the saying? Um, and Brigitte Sophia in the story is a genius computer scientist who has cracked the code to deep artificial intelligence. And because that's such a potentially powerful technology that if abused or if used for nefarious purposes, she essentially has to flee New York City and get out to Colorado, go off grid, ditch her technology, and proceed along this incredible adventure, visiting biodynamic and permaculture farms, getting out in the wilderness, getting connected with a number of different medicinal plants and trees and so on and so forth. There's quite a bit that takes place in Boulder, but also much of the other special places and regions throughout the state of Colorado. And I'm delighted to share that the audiobook of the story is now available, and Brigitte Mars is the narrator of the audiobook. And so we've had a lot of fun collaborating on the story. And essentially, in this book is a whole lot of really important, timely information for now, for this situation that we're all experiencing together on planet Earth in 2025 and this decade in particular.
Yes. Well, very timely, and it sounds fascinating and exciting also. So, Brigitte, what are the top three things we can do to boost our garden soil?
Well, start composting. As I said, I live
Okay.
right downtown Boulder. I have two compost bins going. I live in a HOA complex. And I think a lot of people feel trapped because there's this neighborhood association. So it may be that you have to start going to meetings to get some things going, to have people sign a petition. We don't want pesticides sprayed in our area. We want to have
Mm,
a community garden. We don't want it to be unsafe for our children and pets to be playing. So we need to remember that we can't just keep taking from the earth. We need to give back. So compost. I am also, I heard this quote probably when I was 15, and I've really taken it to heart. It says, if you have water to throw away, throw it on a plant. You know,
yes.
we in Colorado, we know how precious water is, but there's a lot of places where they don't have water coming out of the tap. And I have a basin in my sink. All that water from like rinsing an apple from the store or, rinsing your hands off between, cooking, like we waste gallons of water. What if everyone had a basin in their sink and a few times a day they just opened the door and gave it to the raspberry bush or the basil plants? That's so
Oh,
simple. So we need to respect water more.
mm.
And when I take a bath, if I'm not washing my hair, just using a few drops of Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap or essential oils, I'm going to collect that bath water and give it to the plants on the balcony. So that's a simple thing we can do. And then, another saying that I heard that I say almost every time I'm asked is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And, what if everybody planted more fruit trees? I was, in Germany teaching, and I noticed that on one block, there's a plum tree, an apricot tree, an apple tree, a pear tree. Like, what's wrong with doing that? That there could be such an abundance for everyone. We we've designed our cities to be convenient for cars, and the trees also help to cool the soil. They help to hold the soil down. They produce oxygen, they produce shade, so those are three simple things we might do.
Wonderful. Did you have anything to add, Aaron?
Oh, I love it. The only thing I would add to that off the top of my head is what we do with the leaves when they fall in the autumn. Um, so many of us have lawns and tend to rake up leaves, and in many cases, funny enough, we burn fossil fuel to ship those leaves somewhere else, often to a landfill where they're decomposing in an anaerobic environment, meaning more methane is released to the atmosphere, when instead what we can do is either leave the leaves where they are, which is the best option, or if we are clearing some of our lawns, say for the kids to play soccer or whatever, put them over in a pile to compost. And whatever we're doing, leave things be well into the late spring so that we're not disrupting, because these leaves are habitat for the pollinators, for all manner of organisms. Let things be so that these critters have a good head start heading into the warmer months. And as Brigitte said earlier, the last thing we should do is poison things like dandelions. These are such important members of the community. We should celebrate with gratitude whenever we see them.
Mm. Yeah, because unfortunately, sometimes the city or the county or the HOA, they will spray pesticides because people aren't paying attention or thinking that it's bad or getting into their garden. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And over 50% of owner-occupied homes in the United States are governed under HOA regimes. And whether it was a conspiracy or just accidental, one of the things that has occurred is HOAs and municipal governments have essentially become the marketing arms of the major chemical companies. In many
Oh,
cases, mandating use of chemicals out of this thin veneer, superficial notion of beauty and well-being and so forth. Of course, we all want to thrive. We want to have wonderful neighborhoods, but this superficial appearance of well-being versus the deep, authentic experience of well-being is one of the big opportunities we have as a society to investigate and to learn about and to change course around.
mm, yeah, I see. Well, I'd like to play another clip on your simple gardening wisdom course on Stream Plus. Can we play that third clip?
Another simple example of companion planting would be to plant vines like these squashes or cucumbers with other bigger plants like peppers or tomatoes.
Another really wonderful plant that more and more people are incorporating into their gardens is the hemp plant, which has so many beneficial uses. As a medicine, it's great for things like pain relief and salves and soaking salts. You can even eat and get amazing nutrition from the seeds. And because this plant is so prolific in its foliage each year, it gives us a whole lot of spare leaves and stems and things that we can add in our mulching layer when we're covering up the soil and building our soil in the garden. So highly encourage folks to grow the hemp plant if it's something that you'd like to have in your garden as well. I know working with nitrogen fixers is part of the biomimicry ecological design strategy in a garden that really helps various plants to thrive. And Nick, tell us, what are nitrogen fixers and what are some of the varieties that are great to use?
Yeah, totally. So it seems complicated, but nitrogen fixing plants are simply just plants that put more nitrogen back into the soil than they take out, nitrogen being a major macronutrient of all plant life. And so a really fascinating thing that we see in nature, if you go off into the woods and look around, almost always in nature, next to fruiting plants, you will find nitrogen fixing plants because of the mutual benefit that they have in an ecosystem. And this is a plant called false indigo, or Amorpha fructosa for its Latin name. And this is a nitrogen fixing shrub that we use in our forest gardens. We also use plants like Siberian pea shrub, honey locust, and black locust. And all of these plants are in the legume family, so you can see their bean-shaped leaves.
Yeah, so what is companion planting then, Aaron?
As Nick was explaining there in the video clip, and by the way, Nick is such an incredible master gardener and educator. I'm delighted that he's part of our course. Companion planting is mimicking nature's associative pattern that we see among many different plants and trees and shrubs all around the world. In some cases, it's nitrogen fixers with fruit bearers, and there are a lot of other instances where we'll see those mutually beneficial relationships in close proximity. One of the things we put together for this course is a companion planting guide that indicates which plants do well with one another, as well as which plants ought to be planted farther away from each other. Because just as some plants love to be together, there are many instances when a type of plant wants to be far away from another type of plant. And of course, companion planting can do a lot with pest pressure control as well. So there's a lot to discover there. That's part of the permaculture tradition. It's part of the integrated pest management tradition that we find in organic agriculture and gardening. And just delighted that we've got experts like Nick and Helen and others to walk us through that in detail. And again, that companion planting guide is a great resource for folks.
That's wonderful. Well, as we're wrapping up here, any final words, Brigitte?
I think I said my final words, but just get started. This is a subject you can always keep learning about. Gardening can get better year after year. So learn to do it and challenge the norm that we've been given to do something else, to be part of the solution. We can all be part of a solution, even if it's just our own porches, balconies, and yards.
Oh, that's so inspiring. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for Getting Our Hands in the Dirt, the healing and wisdom of simple gardening with Erin Perry and Brigitte Mars. Their course, Simple Gardening Wisdom, is available now on the Stream Plus platform. So join Stream Plus and gain immediate access to this incredible program and guide, and you'll get access to their course along with hundreds of other incredible spiritual teachers and programs. And we're proud to say Humanities Stream Plus is the largest global streaming platform for consciousness raising masterclasses and transformational education. I wanted to thank Erin and Brigitte for being here today, and also Steve Farrell, Dee Meyer, and the production team, Jim Gray, Garth Catterall, Andy Gutsky, Nanette Kennedy, Karen Weissert, and the rest of Humanities team. Blessings.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Blessings.
Thank you.